Welcome into the DMVR Buffs podcast. My name is Jake Schwanitz. Today I am joined by my friends Ryan Koenigsberg, Henry Chisholm. Before we get into the show, we are presented by the American Raptors. Head on over to AmericanRaptors.com. Grab your free ticket for one of their rugby games or stream all their matches on that site as AmericanRaptors.com. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Good. I've got a halo of light on my head.
Oh, you do? That's kind of fun,
Illustrate
isn't it?
the angel that I am.
I can get a little light if I go this way. There we go.
I'm Two-Face.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, the Owen McCown era is off and running.
Yeah,
It sure is.
We're going. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on his first game. I've already talked a lot about him, but I want to hear what you guys thought. It was what Coach Calderell called CU's best passing production in 2 seasons. Take that.
I don't mean to laugh.
But it's true.
It is true.
He went for
It's just,
258.
God damn it.
I mean, the eye test, too. He was easily the best quarterback that I've seen play for this team in 2 years. Ryan, your thoughts on Owen McCown. How did you think he did in his first career start?
The word I would just use is competent. And it's not a word you've been able to use about anyone else in the last 2 years. And so, you know, the hard thing for Owen and, you know, being in the stands and just kind of hearing the fans, I think there was like a lot of support for him. But also when you're lauded at like the next guy to come in is always going to be the savior.
Yep.
And so when you get that put on your shoulders, everyone expects a lot more. I personally didn't. 26 of 42, 258 yards. Could have been more. I come away from it being like, okay, that's something you can build on. Of course, you want to like, you know, start it with this like, oh, the lore of Owen McCown starts with him coming and getting the team off the schneid, and he makes some crazy game-winning drive at the end, whatever. But like, the defense wasn't going to allow that to happen in the first place.
Yep.
I was excited. You know, our friend Adam Munster Tiger tweeted out before the game like, what defines a successful start for you? And I was like, confidence and competence in throwing a football. And I saw that. So on the whole, I liked what I saw. Henry?
He wasn't the problem.
That's true.
I think he wasn't one of the problems, I guess I should say, because there were a lot of them. You're not going to get a perfect performance from a true freshman who, I mean, it's like, sure, Trevor Lawrence was awesome. He was also, you know, 6'4" and all that sort of stuff. Like, Owen McCown has a lot of just physical development that is needed before he turns into a good Pac-12 quarterback. But in terms of the other parts of the game, you know, knowing where to go with the ball, not panicking, but finding space to extend plays, there's a lot to like. And maybe this is kind of like a lazy thing to say, but he just looks like the son of an NFL quarterback. Mm-hmm. Like, he looks like he knows what he's doing. Like, the arm isn't totally there yet. Mm-hmm. Like, you need a little more zip on those balls. But again, competent. I think competent. Yeah. Maybe just almost a competent, but this was at the very least just a... You're out there, you're throwing the football around 258 yards. There's nothing to complain about when there's 258 yards.
The crazy thing for me is, like, I go just look at the receiving stats. Like, you know, the passing stats over the past few years, they look so bad. But, like, then during those games, when you scroll down to the receiving stats, it was a joke. You know, you'd see, like, 1 catch for 48 yards for Brendan Rice or something. And then, like, 2 catches for 8 yards for Dimitri Stanley. And, like, this looks like a legitimate receiving chart. 4 catches, 82 yards for Daniel Arias. You know, Brady Russell has 4 catches for 33. RJ Sneed has 3 catches for 29. Maurice Bell has 5 catches for 26. That looks like a real box score for receivers.
Yeah. There's a touchdown in there too.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's
Jordan Tyson, the garbage time king.
Yes.
Yeah. It's too early to say like, oh yeah, Owen McCown, that's the future all Pac-12 quarterback. But you have at least one box checked. Now you figure out the running game and the receivers and, you know, the blocking and every part of the defense. But there is that one thing that you now have where you say, okay, this is Owen McCown's team.
Yeah, and I think that can take you a long, long way if you ever get that other stuff figured out. And that's the sad thing about this right now is, like, I would love to just see, like, Owen McCown get put into a pressure situation where, like, it's the third quarter and you're down by 7 and your defense just gave one up and, like, you need one here. Like, how does he respond in that moment? How
Clutch
does he
factor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to see that. That's how you really grow up and you really mature as a quarterback. And I'm legitimately fearful that he's never going to get that opportunity this whole season.
It's absolutely valid. I mean, we'll get into Arizona a bit later.
Really quick.
Go ahead.
We don't even know yet if they're going to play him the rest of the season. Obviously, it seems like the obvious decision. There is a world where he plays 2 more games and then they shut him down to keep his red shirt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Hank, if you had something to say on that.
Oh, no, totally. And I'm beyond that. He could put up 98 yards on 45% passing this week. I still think he's probably your best option just because he gave you that last week, which is a new high for anybody in that room. But, yeah, it is still week to week.
Yeah, the challenge for him this week is Arizona's obviously going to look at that film and just see how much they did at or around the line of scrimmage and try to counteract that. The exciting part about that is that means maybe you get some press coverage opportunities with Daniel Arias and RJ Sneed and these guys. And, I think Owen actually has the game to be able to throw it out there and give those guys a chance. We saw it happen with Arias a couple times in that game.
Yeah, so talking to Darrell on Monday, he was asked who the starting quarterback was. He, of course, said Owen McCown, but did not really commit to him long-term, as you said. So I definitely think that the red shirt situation is still in play. And then when you just look at the November slate for the Buffs, I mean, Oregon, Utah, Washington, USC, not in that order, but that's who you got to go up against. And as a true freshman who's, let's be honest, pretty small at this point, not really fully grown out into his body, as well as the arm, I mean, do you really want to throw him to those Wolves? So it's a valid question.
Carl's going to have to go to Rick George's office at some point and just say, like, hey, am I canned if I don't win a game here? Because if so, then I'm playing Owen the rest of the year. If you're telling me, hey, you're coming back, then I'm going to sit him down so we keep his red shirt because now I'm playing for the future. Am I playing for right now or am I playing for the future? The other thing, though, and I guess that would change that a little bit, is in college football, every win really does count. Like, you have recruiting visits and you have all this stuff. So, like, if you can win one, you have to try to do it. And that the same thing, going winless doesn't have any sort of benefit like it would in the pros,
right?
Where you get a higher draft pick. So, at this point, I would say Owen has to play the rest of the season. And, yeah, is he going to learn some probably tough and painful, literally, lessons against that, gauntlet to end the season? For sure. But he'll be better for it long term as long as he doesn't get, legitimately hurt.
Going back to something Hank said, though, just on, you got to have the wide receivers and running backs come along. There was a lot of freshmen playing last weekend on the offensive line, at running back, most notably, I think, and at wide receiver. What freshman other than McCown impressed you guys the most? I mean, there's Jordan Tyson to pick from. Chase Sowell didn't really do much. He ended up leaving the game with an injury and probably will not be available this week. But then Charlie Offerdahl at the start at running back over Deion Smith. We also saw Anthony Hankerson for the first time from St. Thomas Aquinas High School, a big-time recruit for this team, and had an awesome run that we all saw. Who was the most impressive freshman to you guys?
It's Hankerson to me. He's maybe part of that is just being so excited to finally see him. Well, especially because he was supposed to gray shirt this year, so you weren't supposed to be able to see him at all. But then I think it was Ramon Jefferson transferred out as quickly as he transferred in. They're like, might as well use this scholarship here, and he lived up to the hype. 7 carries, 25 yards. That's solid for considering what's going on. He's out there breaking tackles. I mean, he led St. Thomas Aquinas to back-to-back state championships as a running back, and it was kind of a surprise to me that he wound up being a gray shirt candidate, and I feel validated because he looked good, and I'm excited to see him run the ball more.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like 1 or 2 plays that you end up hanging on to for Hankerson.
Right, yep.
But the one run was electric.
The 10-yard run.
Right. It had Javonte Williams or one of those guys written all over it. So that was exciting. I have to say, though, like, as excited I am for that, I still want to see more. I'm pretty impressed by Charlie Offerdahl.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy who, if you saw him at the spring game last year, you saw him ball out, and you were just like, oh, this is like a cute story of a guy who will probably never play.
Yep.
And he worked his way up, did it again in this year's spring game, where everyone's like, damn, can he play? And then he gets out on the field last week. It looked like he could play. And in this game, again, given the circumstances, it's not great, but 3.4 yards per carry is right there with Hankerson at 3.6.
Yep.
Which is the bulk of your carries in the game. 14 carries, 47 yards. I just feel like he looks like he looks like he's just getting started, and that's exciting to me. And it feels like he has, I don't know, an it factor about him.
Would you say a little bit of Philip Lindsay? I mean, he's a Colorado native. He compared himself to Philip Lindsay when I asked him which pros he likes to watch and model his game after. And he's a small running back running for Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, Phil had this like aggression in his game that I have not seen from Charlie Offerdahl yet. But I like the comp. Like, it is crazy to say, but at this point, putting someone on the field who's just like proud to be wearing the jersey is worth something. And that, like, when Philip Lindsay came in, they were in the same situation. Like, John Embry recruited Philip Lindsay. So they were terrible then. And, like, having that dude in that locker room who loved Colorado football, cared about it, you know, felt like he was really doing something special when he put on a gold helmet, like, that counts for something. So there is something to that. I would say, like, I want to see a little bit more from him in terms of finishing runs to be compared to Philip Lindsay. But in that sense of just, like, maybe eventually he ends up being a captain just because that, like, he's that guy. He loves the team that much. That's worth something.
Right, valid points. Real quick, going to talk to you guys about a couple of our sponsors. Shout out to DraftKings. They have been awesome. If you got in on that Broncos moneyline bet on Sunday night, we had to sweat that one out a little. It took until the fourth quarter until they actually even had a lead. But that one cashed out. Henry is in on the Aaron Judge boosted hit odds tonight. It's plus 100, right?
It sure is.
Plus 100 to get a hit. They actually refunded last night everyone who took that offer because Judge was walked on all his at-bats last night.
That's so crazy.
To make things even sweeter, you can throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DMVR to get $200 in free bets. If your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any place a $5 bet on any football game. It's code DMVR only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Also, shout out to Athletic Greens. Since I've instituted the routine of waking up, taking my Athletic Greens every day, I really have felt an improvement in just my energy and overall health at this point. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, all loaded up in the Athletic Greens. To make it easy, they're going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/buffs. Once again, that is athleticgreens.com/buffs to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, guys, moving on. We're going to talk a bit about Arizona and then use it to kind of segue into the transfer portal and then talk about the Buffs' future. Arizona, of course, a team that went 1-11 last year. They have a chance to go 3-2 this weekend against the Buffs. Does that turnaround inspire some hope into you guys that the Buffs program maybe not is as far off as most people think?
Definitely. I mean, Arizona was in a worse place than Colorado as recently as last year when the Buffs blew them out. But it's really simple. Like, get yourself a coach and a staff and get yourself a quarterback, and you can win football games in college football. And, you know, it's to be seen so far on Owen. But that staff down there has been doing a good job of recruiting. Like you mentioned, a good job of using the transfer portal. And it doesn't mean you're competing for national championships all of a sudden, but you're competing for Pac-12 wins all of a sudden.
Right.
So that's the big hope, I think, for me, is that you really are just like one good coach away. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the Buffs probably had it in Mel Tucker, and then they lost it just as quick as they had.
That is tough. I've been thinking a lot about last year before the Arizona game. We're talking with the PHNX guys, and they're just making jokes. Like, we're saying, like, yeah, I think Arizona's got this one. And at that point, they had lost 16 games in a row, 17 games in a row, something like that. And they're just saying, like, no, you guys don't understand what this is going to look like. Like, you do not get what this bad football looks like. And then Colorado goes out there and stops them.
It was like 35-7.
Exactly. Did they let them score?
34-0.
34-0. Isn't that wild? But yeah, and so you go through that, and now the roles feel like they're reversed. Yep. Where it's like Arizona, I know there's a lot of hype. There's whatever. They beat NDSU. I I don't think this is a bowl team. I think this is a team that probably wins 4 games, 5 games, something right around there, and that puts them about where the Buffs were last year. And now Colorado is this exact reversal of the roles where they're just
fighting for a
terrible.
win.
I mean, terrible. They've been very, very, very bad. They've lost 4 games by 25 points. Like it's bad. So there's hope, I guess, that you can turn it around, but it's a dark time. Like it feels like it's a lot of work.
The thing about Arizona, though, is they look like a competent and competitive Pac-12 football team.
Yep.
And the Buffs are so far from that right now. So,
Yep.
like, they did that. They took shortcuts to get there. And the transfer portal can be a huge help for you there. But, like, it's as simple as, like, Jaden DeLora is just
He's
way
solid.
better than what Colorado has.
Yeah.
Like, at least to this point with Owen. So it's that simple to me. Is like they got him. Jedfish is a legitimate, like, he gets football at a master class level. He brought in a staff that can help him get guys. And they flipped it, and I felt like the big thing is Jedfish came in with a really solid plan. Like, he knew what he wanted to do, and he executed it. I don't know if Carl Durrell ever, like, it never seemed to me like he was taking steps towards a plan that he was executing.
Right. I mean, we can use that as a segue into the next part about this, which is the transfer portal. And as you mentioned, Ryan, Jaden DeLora, I mean, he's really the reason why this team has turned around so much. I mean, you could add in Jacob Cowing, too, the wide receiver. But the thing that I keep on hearing from Buffs fans is how all these players are going to leave in the transfer portal after this season. Well, as you mentioned, Hank, I mean, Arizona is probably thinking the same thing. Whatever talent they had last year was probably going to leave through the transfer portal. And all of a sudden, they're getting all these guys in. It goes back to what you said, though, Ryan. You need a head coach with a plan. So how confident are you guys in the next coaching staff? We, of course, don't know who it is yet. But that they can hit this coaching staff and that they can keep some of these guys around to really start to build something, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a challenge for sure. And we talked about, like, oh, what if Owen blows up? Well, then the new coach, his first job is re-recruiting Owen McCown. And if he can do that, then great. But I think the hard thing for people to remember, and I brought this up last week on the show, is just that Rick George got his first coaching hire right. And that was over a full cycle, like a normal thing. The second time, he definitely got his hands tied. Now, we can, criticize the contract all day long, and we should. But I have confidence that Rick George actually knows what a good football coach looks like. And in this specific case, he had his hands tied and didn't want to go for it with a interim head coach for a whole year.
Right.
Yep, I think so. I mean, the portal is going to be the big key regardless of what happens and who's here. I've said it quite a few times on this podcast, but if I had been in this staff's shoes, I would have been hammering the portal. Like, you're just looking for guys who can come in here and play. And on top of that, once you transfer, you can't transfer again. And so instead of going and getting those guys and saying, like, okay, now you're here for 3 more years or 2 more years or whatever it may be, you add freshmen. And so now you're in this situation where, like I said, I really like the Anthony Hankerson pickup. If he plays poorly, yeah, you probably keep him. But that's a player who played poorly. If he plays well, then he's probably going to the portal. And so there's that flip side of that too. I mean, regardless, though, there just aren't a lot of really talented players on this team right now. And I think that's obvious.
That's fair. Yeah.
Like, you look at them when they line up against Minnesota, and from the first snap, you're like, there's just a size speed gap here.
Yep.
The UCLA game, Zach Charbonnet breaking all those tackles. Yeah, there's a gap. There's a gap. And so I guess I'm not quite as worried about the departures in the transfer portal, because I feel like you do need to really build out this team through the portal this offseason.
I asked all those questions to lead to this one. Obviously, Arizona is the game this weekend. Next week is the bye. If the Buffs play poorly again and they lose by 25 plus points or more, the spread is 17.5. Do we see a change going into the bye week?
I don't know. I'm hearing so much conflicting information about this. some people kind of made it seem like it was imminent a couple weeks ago after the Minnesota game. Other people have said it's not happening unless they win 0 games. And so, like, I honestly don't know. I will say, getting blown out by Arizona after you blew them out last year should be a giant red flag. But I still feel like money and resources are the biggest hurdle here. Now, that doesn't mean you don't fire Karl Dorrell. It just means maybe you need more time to gather the resources you need to fire Dorrell, because we talked about this earlier. Like, it's a fully guaranteed contract. So you owe him $7 million this year. And what, there's 3 more years left on it?
I think it's to 24.
Okay.
So 23 and 24, 2 more years.
So 2 more years after. So that's essentially going to bring it down to 4.5 or something, or 4. If you kept him for another year, that's $2.5-3 million difference. What does that do for you, other than save you that money? Like, it probably does more long-term damage. So I think the move will be made eventually. It's just, I wonder if they feel comfortable with what they have to do it now.
Yeah, I would say it happens. It's, again, tough call just because they haven't done it so far. I think the bye week always makes sense. It's just tough to say. I thought that unless they, I guess I was saying if they won 2 games, 3 games, then you have that conversation. There's still a chance to win 2 or 3 games. Like, it seems so unlikely because of how poorly they play, but there's plenty of opportunities to hit that mark. I still think, though, that you have to pull the trigger just because you've got nothing out of this football team for the first month of the season, and there's really no reason to think. I mean, Owen McCown was kind of your final card you could play, played the card. He did about all he could. Still not competitive.
How about this then? So say the Buffs do get blown out this weekend. They don't fire Dorrell. Does that mean he's coaching throughout the end of the year regardless?
Probably. Because I don't know. I mean, sometimes you just have to do things just to appease the fan base. Like, so maybe they just do it later in the season just to say, like, hey, we hear you. Like, if you plan on keeping him, then you don't have to do things to appease the fan base. But I think it's pretty clear now. We all know that they plan on firing him and they want to fire him. So at a certain point, you might just say, like, it's not to boost the team or anything. It's just to say, like, we listened. You guys were right. We fired Karl Dorrell, Real one quick point on the transfer portal. I do think we're seeing the mass exodus sort of stuff that we're seeing right now. I think will actually correct back a little bit over time. Like, Brendan Rice is 5th in receptions and receiving yards right now at USC. Like, he's an afterthought, where he was a star here, obviously, or at least regarded as one. He's got 9 catches, so, he's getting a little under 3 catches a game. We saw the same thing happen with KD Nixon the year before. Transfers to USC isn't really part of what they want to do. So I think the whole, like, grass is always greener thing is going to come back to earth a little bit over time. Right now, every player that has a good game is like, oh, I can go play for the big boys, know. And I think over time, you're going to start to see more people realize, like, oh, it's better for me to be on the field and play than it is to go to a place like USC that's just, they're going to tell you and 3 other wide receivers, hey, you're the last piece we need. And then you're going to be fighting with those 3 other wide receivers just to get on the field.
Anything else on the head coaching situation, Hank?
It's just it's a challenge. I mean, there's just nothing you can really say to defend Karl. There's really just nothing there. There hasn't been any sort of fight or anything like that. I mean, the program has consistently declined since he took over. I mean, that first year they go to the bowl game. Still got to give him credit for that, props for that. But it's just been a steady decline with no reason to think that's going to end anytime soon. So you gotta pull the trigger.
We were talking about this earlier with Sam Neuer. Like, he led that team. Him and Jarek Broussard led that team to that bowl game. And then the next offseason, you just kind of pushed him out of town.
Yeah, well, and that was a weird one because he was recovering from the shoulder thing because he had obviously taken a beating playing football like that. And from what I've heard is he just kind of he felt like he wasn't going to be the guy. He felt like it was going to be JT or Brendan, and so that's why he decided to transfer. But he was getting that feeling after not even playing in spring ball. So there was no
like competition.
Yeah, there was no competition at all. But it was just kind of a vibes thing where he was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be the guy. In hindsight, absolutely would have been the guy.
Yeah.
And who knows if that was communicated directly with him or if that was just a thought that he had that was wrong. But things could be different.
There's a lot of things that need fixing right now. The thing that I always go back to that I think starts to just loom even larger as the days go on is just JT tearing his ACL and just how that really messed up the progression of Colorado's quarterback position. It messed up the team last year. This was a quarterback battle in the first 3 weeks of the season. You could have saw all year last year. Didn't even have the option of that.
I think I'm glad
And then gone to the portal.
Yep.
But at least you would have hit the portal this offseason and added another
Exactly.
arm.
That's fair.
Yep.
They could have had Jaden DeLora.
They could have. Absolutely.
Honestly, yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad we might have to have a couple Breckenridge breweries
Yes.
about it. We are throwing a watch party actually at the DMVR bar on Saturday for the Arizona game. Stop by, have yourself a Strawberry Sky or maybe a Broncos Country Pale Ale. Also, you can check out their beer locator at www.breckbrew.com to find a Broncos Country Pale Ale near you. Shout out to those guys. We had a blast there last week, meeting Stanley and taking a tour around their brewing facilities. All right, guys, let's get to picking some games. Enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk some actual football. There's two real good headlining games in the Pac-12 this weekend. We'll start off with this one. Oregon State traveling to Salt Lake to play the Utah Utes. Utah is the 12th ranked team in the country. They are 10.5-point favorites. There's only one road favorite in the Pac-12 this week, actually. But your guys' thoughts, Oregon State at Utah, sorry.
Give me Oregon State with the points.
Ooh.
That team... It just fights, man.
Yep.
They again. It's another situation where they just got the coach right, and he had a vision and a plan, and they're super big in the trenches and they're super twitchy on the outsides.
They have speed.
Yes, yes, and it makes for a super formidable opponent for whoever they run into. So. Well, I think Utah, is the more talented team, and they might pull it out in a similar way to what USC did the other night. I think that they keep it within 10.
I want to bet on Oregon State for all the reasons you said. I think things are going really well. But, last week against USC, I guess they did cover that one, but I had an alternate line. I just had, the money line, I guess, for USC. And once again this week, I just can't quite get there. Utah is just too sharp, too good, too strong. I'll take Utah to cover, but what Oregon State has Stanford the next week, that's when I'm going to be all over the Oregon State hype train.
I bet you there's going to be a prime live betting opportunity in this game.
Yeah.
Because 10 points, it's already down to 10. It was 10.5 this morning, down to 10 for Utah. I think I'd take Oregon State, though. Like I said, they have legit speed at the skill positions, and it's impressive their turnaround.
I had Oregon State in a parlay that was 3 safe plays and then one big one, and I took Oregon State money line as the one big one.
Oh.
And it was so close.
That was the 7th of my 9-legger. And then I had Washington to cover and what was the other late night game? I think I pulled up.
Oh, we were watching it.
Utah. I think it was just Utah. Yeah, so I just had those two to cover, and there was easily doing that, and I'm sweating out this USC game. That was awful.
Oh, right. That was the big one that you ended up hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
43-1.
That was one of those
Insane.
games where you just know the underdog hasn't done enough to separate themselves despite doing everything right. They're hitting on all cylinders, and I'm you guys have given yourself so many opportunities to win this game, and you haven't taken it, and you will lose because of it.
Yep, 4 interceptions was their downfall. The next one, this is the only road
I
favorite.
felt like that quarterback was just putting things into harm's way for no good reason.
He looked much better the previous 3 weeks than he did against a real defense. I'll say that. Washington, the 15th team in the country, is a 2.5-point favorite going to UCLA. The Bruins, of course, put a beat down on the Buffs last week. Do you guys believe in the Bruins, or are you still going with Michael Penix and the Huskies?
Hank.
I think I've... Give me... No, I gotta take Washington. I really want to take UCLA. It's just not quite enough points. This is kind of the opposite of the Oregon State thing to me. It's I don't think that Washington is this good. I think they got a little bit too much steam for beating Michigan State. They're better than UCLA. Like they should be just fine. You do wonder if Charbonnet is just going to run him over, but that's the only concern to me.
I mean, they're playing at UCLA. I don't think there's any type of home field advantage the Bruins have.
That is true.
Yeah, but I will say there's not much home field advantage in the Pac-12 at all, but Friday night road teams have really struggled historically in the Pac-12, and really just in college football. Also, I feel like this is a head-scratcher line, and head-scratcher lines, I always like to take the side that is actually causing you to scratch your head. Like, why is this so close? Why is UCLA only 2.5-point dogs? Don't ask, just take them and then figure it out later. So I'll take UCLA despite the fact that Washington is definitely the better football team. I think it's a trap line.
Sage advice. I will also do the same, taking UCLA. Next one, Cal with a huge performance last week against Arizona. They go to Washington State. Washington State is 4-point favorites to Cal. Jaden Ott ran for like 270 yards or something for Cal. He was actually a Colorado recruit, I learned today, for a while.
Yep, he sure was.
The
And now
stories are endless.
He's the freshman of the week and offensive player of the week in the Pac-12.
Yep.
So that's cool. Give me Cal.
You're a believer in Jack Plummer.
I don't know that I am, though, is the thing. But I'm not a believer in Cam Ward. I'm not a believer in really anything. I'm not even a believer in Cal putting up 49 points. Like, that feels fluky to me.
It was.
Exactly. And so I have my concerns, but I do think that, like, it's a decent defense, even though they gave up, 24 points in the first half last week. Give me Cal. They're hot.
I think Washington State wins big.
Yeah.
Like an angry revenge style game after blowing it last week.
I could see it. I'm not a big Cam Ward fan, but I'll take him in this spot -4. Next one, this game a few years ago would have led this segment, but Stanford at Oregon. Oregon's the 13th ranked team in the country. They are 17-point favorites at home. Home Bo Nix. You guys buying in?
I think you have to. Yeah, I think you have to.
You're going to lay 17 on Bo Nix?
Stanford has just given nothing, though. They've given no sort of reason to think that they're decent. Again, this is another one of these where I just don't like I don't want to bet on Oregon. I don't want to. I don't think they're as good as people say. How can... I'm not taking Stanford to cover 17 points. I think there's a real chance by the end of the first quarter they've already blown it.
Yeah, the one thing would be that Stanford usually gives Oregon more than they want. That being said, I'm going with the Ducks.
I do enjoy cheering for Tanner McKee.
He's solid.
He's solid.
He's played well.
You feel more comfortable with him on your team. Like, it's a little nerve-wracking when you're betting against him.
What is it that you like about him?
He's very Davis Millsy.
I love pocket passers.
Yeah.
There's nothing I love more than a good
so
pocket
funny
passer.
how different we are. He's like, I can't stand watching Tanner McKee yet. Like, sign me up for Jaden Delora all day long.
I know, it's like, that idiot Jaden Delora. It's just chaos. Play some football.
Kyler Murray.
Exactly.
It's like Walmart Kyler Murray.
I hate Kyler Murray.
I would advise this as a stay away. I would pick the Ducks, though, if I had to pick a side. Arizona State at the number 6 team in the country, USC. This is a 25.5-point line.
Sheesh.
Do the Trojans do it?
USC also historically struggles with Arizona State, but they're the home team in this one?
They're the home team.
No, they don't cover that.
They're within 21 of Utah last week.
By the way, that kid that transferred from Arizona State to USC, is it Gentry?
Oh, yeah, the linebacker.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like, he looks like a wing on the basketball team, and he's playing middle linebacker on the football team. Though that's never supposed to happen, and it works.
He was so I'm not sure if this changed or if I was just wrong, but I could swear all offseason he was an edge rusher. Like, he was just running off the edge. But, yeah, he's playing off the ball, and it looks hilarious.
It literally looks hilarious. It looks like you took a player from the basketball team and said, go play middle linebacker in the Pac-12.
Hey, Jabari Walker, go play middle linebacker.
Yes, except you're, like, way less.
I guess he's got a wingspan that he can put to his advantage.
He really does, and he knocked down a pass in the game against Oregon State because of it.
I'll take USC. I'll take USC. I hate it, though.
The Sun Devils did put up 13 on Utah, like you said. However, they did have a garbage time touchdown at the very end there. And honestly, just watching it back, I thought Utah was really just kind of in cruise control the whole game. They obviously didn't really feel the pressure. Last one, guys. Colorado travels to Tucson to play the Wildcats. Wildcats are 17.5-point favorites.
I'm not taking the Buffs until they cover.
No, exactly. I'm taking Arizona. I made so much money last week on Colorado and Colorado State. They've lost 4 in a row by 25. You got to take Arizona.
The only thing I would say could change this is if the Buffs just run the ball really well. But they haven't even shown a willingness to commit to the. Maybe it's just because they're trailing by so much. But even when they get the run going, they don't stick with it.
Can only run the ball 3 times before you have to punt.
True.
That's the tough part.
But if you're gashing them.
Well, when you're averaging 3.6 yards a carry, though.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, but like you against Air Force, you like gashed them down the field and finally got in there, and then you kind of got away from it.
We'll do the full deep dive on Friday, but I will say this: this is a team that, if Colorado can just get it together, they should be able to mount some drives and score some points. I don't know if they cover, but they should be able to have some success, more success relative to what they've had the past few weeks.
How's Arizona's running game?
Not very great. Coming into Hank and I were just talking about it before the show. I think it was 125 yards per game on the ground they are averaging. Of course, Colorado's average is way up there in the 300s still.
There's a world in which the Buffs run the ball and stop the run that this is a close game.
Yep.
17.5 points. I would not advise it any way or the other. I truly don't know. But you can catch all those odds on DraftKings. That's going to do it for us today, though, guys. Thank you guys for joining the show. Thank you to Ryan and Hank. Shout out to the American Raptors. We will be back on Friday. Go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.